Hey everyone, I have Mark O'Shara on, Financial Firefighter on Instagram. He's here to talk to us a little bit about getting started in real estate and kind of the mindset and how he got into his first rental property.
Cool.
Welcome aboard, Mark.
Thanks for having me on, Paul.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a full-time firefighter in Honolulu, Hawaii, and I invest out of state though. So as a lot of people know, Hawaii is a very expensive market. So for me, it just kind of, I invest where the numbers make sense, and I live where I want to live, and that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, so from Hawaii, how are we sitting next to each other right now? What are we up to?
So we are networking at Michael Zuber's One Rental at a Time 50K subscriber event. So I think that's also something if you want to touch on about how networking is super important in this kind of business, or anything we're working on, side hustles, generating extra income, but just networking with people that are doing it is super helpful.
Yeah, like Mark here is from Hawaii and I'm out of Cleveland, Ohio, as most of you know that follow me. But yeah, we came together, meeting through this community. Michael Zuber's on. We're celebrating his 50,000 subscribers. I'm obviously well off from that, but bringing guys on like Mark and other people, maybe we'll get there someday. So how did you get started in getting your first rental property?
So I got started more from I guess you can say, mindset standpoint.
Okay.
So for me, I had real estate back in 2008, but I never considered myself a landlord.
Okay.
It was really just that traditional, you buy a home, you sit on it for 30 years, and that's how you build wealth. And that's kind of where my mindset was at. And I started looking at things a lot differently, especially when things got shut down. The riskiness of relying on a pension for my fire service. And it kind of got me realizing that what I was doing, I probably wouldn't have the retirement that I was hoping for. So one of my friends was investing remotely out of state, and other things happened, and my life kind of just changed as far as me realizing how risky I was being, even though I had this pension. So for me, I looked at it as, I'm gonna go this real estate route, which my friend was recommending. And so what I did was, I actually initially first used a HELOC to get my first rental property. And for a lot of people that follow my channel, they kind of know that I always tell people that I feel that I scale too quickly.
Okay.
And so I used the HELOC, and the first few properties that I did get were very easy. No hiccups, smooth. And I said, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go all in. And I emptied out retirement accounts. And so I got 14 properties in Pittsburgh fairly quickly, maybe 15 months or so.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and I think I'm glad I did it, but I definitely think I could have been more strategic about how I did it. So
All right. So what would you do different if you were to start over?
definitely, I think for me, I'm more of a buy and hold investor. Not really. I think fix and flip is great. However, I'd rather generate kind of that base first of generating some passive income through rentals, and then you can dabble in that fix and flip model. For me, what I would do differently, I think, is I didn't prepare well with reserves.
Okay.
And part of that is being in Hawaii. You do get maintenance on properties,
Okay.
but you don't get a lot of these weather related type of things.
Yeah.
Like the cold, and even like, if you go to Florida, the hurricane. So for me, I plan for some reserves, but for example, Pittsburgh, they have a lot of older properties.
Yes.
So you get a lot of these kind of middle maintenance type of things that come up. And for me, that's what I wasn't really prepared well for. So
Gotcha.
reserves is super important, I think.
Yeah. So walk me through like your very first property. Like, what did you have to prep for, and how did you research that market to decide I wanted to go and buy properties in Pittsburgh?
So I think the biggest thing for me is kind of getting a network or someone that you know that invests in that market, or whether you have family there, or relatives or friends. But my friend, like I said, he was investing there first, and he always hates that I say this, but he made a lot of mistakes. So that was kind of why I felt comfortable jumping on that market, because I felt like, all right, you made all these mistakes. Now you have a property management kind of team in place. You have a realtor in place. You have contracts. So I felt way more comfortable jumping in on that market. However, I made my own mistakes. So I think it's just layering off of each other. So other people that I'm helping trying to get started in Pittsburgh, same thing. They're learning from the mistakes that I've made, and same the mistakes that I've learned from, and then we're just kind of layering on top of that. So we're just trying to help everyone get started. And yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, was networking and getting in connection with people that are already in that market doing the work.
Gotcha. So, a couple ways that you scaled your properties. It seemed like you first took a HELOC out against your personal residence. That's one way.
Yeah.
And then you also maxed out some retirement accounts to start buying properties. And then was there anything else? Was there any reserves that you had in savings that just were your cash that you started to?
So the other thing, so like I mentioned back, I had property from 2008, and it's the same thing, kind of that traditional, maybe you start with a condo or a smaller home, and then as you get older, you get a family, you might move up into a single family home. So I was fortunate to be able to have a condo and then get a single family home. But as I looked at it, that condo, nothing really cash flows traditional long term in Hawaii. So as I started getting into these out of state investment properties, I was like, you know what, I'm going to 1031 out of the condo and into more properties in Pittsburgh. And that's another thing I probably learned from, is if I was to do it again, there was a lot of things I would do differently from that standpoint. I feel like, I would have gone bigger if I did it again.
Yeah.
So I 1031 into, so I kind of did scale up. I went from a condo to multiple single family homes. So I guess I did scale up from a condo to homes. But I think what would have been better is if I went from the condo to like a 10 unit apartment, or scaled upwards, because I kind of went sideways in a sense. So I think if I was to do it again, I would have went up. But so that's kind of how that whole 14 properties kind of came together. Yeah.
And quickly for the audience, because not everybody knows, what's a 1031 exchange?
Basically, it's kind of not avoiding taxes, but you're going to sell a property into like kind property, and you're basically kicking the taxes down the road. And then there's certain requirements. You have 45 days to find the replacement properties, and then you have 180 days to close on the transaction. So there is some requirements, and I think Dion always talks about it too. Sometimes we don't want to make that mistake of doing it just for the taxes, or kicking the taxes down the road. So sometimes it might be better to pay the taxes.
Yeah.
It's all about finding that great deal. But that's definitely one thing. If I was to do it again, would either be 1031 and scale up, or even though the property in Hawaii didn't cash flow very well, what I'm realizing is, even though I have these cash flowing properties out of state, I'm finding it challenging to access the equity in those properties because I don't live in that area.
Yeah.
So if I was to do it again, that's another thing I might consider, is just keep that condo, even though the cash flow is very minimal at best, but I would be able to access the equity a lot easier because it was something that, I live in that area, so the banks, it would be a lot easier to access that capital to
Yeah,
acquire.
you can work with local banks.
Yeah,
a little bit easier than
just learning, right? We learn, right?
From Hawaii to really almost all the way across the country.
Yep. So maybe if I lived in, or maybe if I visited Pittsburgh
A lot
and made
more,
relationships with the banks, it might help. But just honestly, I haven't been there yet. I haven't been to Pittsburgh, so
you have not been to Pittsburgh at all?
I've been there. I've not seen my properties. I keep saying I'm going to make it out there, but I haven't done it yet.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So what, about almost 3 years now?
Yep.
So about 3 years of
Yeah.
investing, and
Yeah.
you haven't even seen any of your properties.
Yeah. Just on FaceTime calls or pictures,
Yeah.
or
So I would say building that team is really important if you're going to be using that strategy.
Very, very
Yeah.
important. I think that's the most important thing, and I think that's kind of how people talk about sleep well at night, right? So it's all about having that team in place, and it takes. And I think the number one thing, we didn't touch on it, I think, is knowing yourself, though, because honestly, there's some people that just cannot invest at that distance because they're very hands-on, or they're what you would call maybe a micromanager, and for them it might be better off investing in their backyard or much closer, even though the returns might be smaller, but it allows them to sleep well at night because that property is maybe a 2-hour drive away, or something where they can still get there and see it more often. But for some people, investing 5,000 miles away, or even at a distance, it's just not for them. And that's just, you just got to know your personality, I think.
Gotcha. So outside of that, though, how long did you research the Pittsburgh market before you actually bought your first property?
Not as much as I probably should have.
Okay.
I mean, I did my research. I mean, it's a very stable market, very affordable. I think, but that's also, I think people get too caught up in trying to find that perfect market.
Yeah.
And you go to Bigger Pockets. You go to a different site. They'll have their top 10, the best market to invest in.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think that's where people get too caught up in trying to figure out which market to invest in, and that actually prevents them from actually taking action. So I think for me, it was just really finding a quality market. But we go back to it again, it's just more about having that team or relationship in that market is way more important than how great the market is. Because you know too, right? Every market, someone's making money.
Yeah.
No matter how shitty the market is, someone could be making money there, and somebody's making it work. So I think that's the important thing, is just having more of a connection and relationship. And hey, of course, do your research on the market. But if you get too caught up in saying, I need this type of return or this much appreciation, and I want this low taxes, and you're just never going to get started, I think.
Yeah, so you said you had your friend that was already, well, in the market, and you can learn from a lot of his mistakes. So as you noted, you made plenty of your own mistakes, but you avoided plenty of mistakes going forward. You made some, and now you're trying to help other people not make all of those mistakes.
Yeah, I think for me and just like you're just trying to help people get that mindset of that it can be done, and that being around other people that are doing it is super helpful. And I think that's what these type of events are all about, is just being around people. And I think who said it there? Oh, at the Ryan Pineda event, right? He was talking about being kind of like an undercover investor, and I think that's how a lot of people are. Either they don't think they have anything to bring to the table, whether it's they're only looking right now, or they only have one property. But there's just tell people what you're doing, and what we're finding out is everyone is willing to help each other. Everyone is willing to bring some sort of information or connection, and this community is amazing.
Definitely, yeah. If you're trying to get into real estate investing at all, just talk to everybody you know about what you're doing. You'll get a lot more further ahead. So if anybody wanted to find you, Mark, where could they find you?
You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter or X, or whatever you want to call it, Facebook, but I'm under Financial Firefighter, and I always got to give credit to Millennial Mike, because he did come up with the name. But yeah, so Financial Firefighter on pretty much all social media platforms. But yeah, and subscribe to my YouTube channel and Paul's channel, and we're trying to grow and help others.
Yeah, and I will put all of the links to his channel in the description of this video as well. Well, we're going to jump off right now and get back to the conference. Thanks.
Bye.